Hey everyone, my name is Usman, and I was, pleasured and honored to actually get to ride the Aprilia RS660 Tuono on the track a couple of days ago, and it was an absolute blast. I loved it. So before I actually got on the bike, I was just reading about it online, a couple of nights ago, just to understand what can I expect out of the bike when I take it out on the circuit. So when you read it on the paper, it sounds very exciting, but 100 horsepower at 183 kgs, I wasn't expecting it to be that fast. But the moment I got on the bike and the first lap out, I proved myself wrong. It is an incredible bike. Just the sheer power in it is just brilliant. It really surprised me when I went out for the first few laps. I wasn't expecting it to be this fast, but it is. It genuinely really surprised me when I got on the throttle and it just came up on me. I was like, oh wow, this is absolutely brilliant. So I took it out on the circuit. We were on the hill circuit. It's about 1.5 kilometers, so it's got tight technical turns as well as a long straight. So some really hard braking zones, some really nice corners, flowing ones. So it's a circuit where you can really test a bike properly. And I did about 30-40 laps on there, so a decent amount of time on the bike. So I'm going to split in terms of the track and the road performance of the bike, because obviously it's not a track only bike and it's also not just a road only bike. Some of the enthusiasts will take this bike on the track as well. So while I was out on the track in terms of the bike, things that I absolutely loved, number one was the power, as I said. It's just insane how smooth it is throughout the power band. It doesn't matter if you're on the high rev, low rev, it's got constant and consistent power throughout. So whether sometimes you come into a corner, you miss a shift, you get on the throttle and there's no power. But in this bike, you just get enough power throughout the corner. So I absolutely love that fact about this bike. You don't have to be in a certain rev range to actually extract the most out of the bike. That's really nice. And even from a top, sort of top speed perspective, I was out on the track with some of the other super sport bike and it would keep up. Obviously it's not going to cross them, but it does keep up, which is quite impressive for a bike like this. The other things that I absolutely loved about the bike is, number one, the stock brakes on the bike. They are just phenomenal. I wasn't expecting the stock brakes to be that good, because usually if you're riding in 43, 45 degrees temperature, after a few laps, stock bikes, they start to develop a fade on their brakes. Not with this machine. It just tells you how good the quality of the parts that has been used on there. Straight out of the box, it's a completely stock bike. And throughout the day, there was not a single moment that I felt any of the fade on the brakes. That was really confidence inspiring, because that's the last thing that you want. You'll be riding a bike and a few times you use the brakes and the next thing you know, it starts to fade out. So that is something super impressive about the bike, given that it's completely stock, nothing's been changed on it. The third thing that I absolutely loved about this bike is the transmission. It's just one of those bikes where I don't know how to explain properly, but it's just smooth in the transmission. Throughout the shift, whether it's an upshift or a downshift, it doesn't have a quick shifter, the one that I was riding on the track. And I was using the clutch the whole time, and I was purposefully being very harsh on my downshifts just to see how the bike reacts. Because a lot of times, the other naked bikes that I ride, when you are a bit harsh on the downshift, the rear starts to lock. It will start to, put all sort of shapes on the bike. But this one, you go down all the way from 5th to 2nd gear, and it doesn't lock at all. It just gets into a very smooth slide, that's very controlled. You don't feel the bike getting out of shape. It's all under control. So that is phenomenal about this bike, because even on the roads, you do come up to situations where you would have to, go down, and the last thing you want is your bike moving around under those conditions. So for that, for a stock bike, a naked bike coming out, it's just phenomenal. Throughout the whole day, I was trying different sort of, downshift techniques, whether going from 3 different gears, 1 gear, gear by gear. I even tried to do downless clutch shift, clutch shift, downshift, and they worked out perfectly as well on this. So I think this is a phenomenal bike to have on the track. It's a lot of fun to throw around on the track. It goes through the corners brilliantly. The stock bike with the stock tires, the stock setup, I think it's an incredible bike for anyone to just take it around the track and actually, just ride around and be competitive. It's not slow by any standards. You would go around the track and you will actually absolutely love this bike. A couple of things that on the track I would probably, try and see if I can improve or change, maybe that I wasn't a big fan of. Number one is the throttle response. I feel it's a bit too twitchy at times, because you're coming out of the corners, you have to be very smooth with it, otherwise it just starts to sort of bounce around on the throttle. So it's a bit twitchy for my liking, but it's not a bigger problem. You can always set these things up. So that was one. The other thing that I potentially feel, which may not be something that people want to change, because obviously this bike was not designed just for the track or just for the road, was the rear suspension. It's a bit too soft for my liking, in a sense that when you come out of the corners, the bike tends to squat a lot more, given how much power it produces on, even throughout the bay. It just sort of squats down a little bit and then you end up running wide. So that's something that you would probably have to adjust. But again, it's not a bad thing, because you will take this bike out on the road and that's where you do need a soft suspension so you don't feel every single coin and bump on the road. Other than that, the bike felt absolutely planted throughout the day. And now when I think about a road perspective on this bike, I think this is one of the greatest bikes there is for the road, because as I was riding, the riding position on this bike was just phenomenal, because throughout the day I managed to be on this bike and a couple of other bikes, including a few sports bikes, and I was just too comfortable on this bike, and the fact that I wasn't going slow made me actually want this bike even more, because I could be on a comfortable position, comfortable bike, but still go as fast. It is very, very smooth, it is very, very comfortable, so as you ride the riding position, it's nice and wide and open. And the best part is about the ground clearance, because a lot of times when I'm riding a naked bike on this track, majority of the times the stock bikes, as you get along in the corner, they do start scraping. So either your footrest or sometimes even the bodywork starts scraping on the track. But with this bike, throughout the corners, throughout the track, I did not scrape it once. And despite the fact that we were going into the corners, knee down, elbow down, it was definitely very, very far away from actually scraping anything on the ground. So that's something that's absolutely amazing about the bike, and I think on the road that's one of the things that you would really value, going over bumps or anything along those lines. Also from a road perspective, it has a couple of different sort of features, so you can either ride it on the road mode or the race mode. So I tried both of them on the track. Obviously the race mode is a bit more harsh, it delivers the power rather quickly, so you have to be a bit controlled in terms of how you open the throttle, because the bike does kick out from the back if you're not careful with it. But on the road mode, everything was very, very comfortable. You could go around the track, and even the power delivery felt very, very smooth. The other thing that I love about this bike is the dash on this thing. It's colorful, it gives you so many different options. It's just phenomenal. It's literally like looking into a smartphone. So when I did start the bike, and I'm not used to such fancy equipment on the bike, but when I did start it, it looked absolutely great. There are so many different features, and you can customize it so much. And when you start it off, it says the brilliant Aprilia logo comes up and all of that jazz in there. So it's not just a bike to ride around and be happy. It's also a phenomenal machine to look at. Wherever you go, it will stand out from the crowd. And the fact that you can get on this bike, go out on a 1,000-mile ride with your friends and buddies and go around those twisties, or you can bring it to a track and just jump around and be competitive throwing it around the corner. It's just brilliant. Overall, it is a bike that you would pretty much describe as the perfect example of a pocket rocket. It's small, it's light, it's powerful, and it's comfortable. A very rare occasion where you find a bike with combination of all of these points crammed into one single bike. And lastly, a big thank you to Society Motors for lending me this beautiful toy to ride around on the track, and especially the color as well. It's a very unique looking color as well, and I absolutely love riding this around the track. It really does stand out. So this bike starts at 45,500 dirhams, which I think is an absolute steal and a bargain, because given how the prices have been going up recently, this is an absolute steal. The RS660 full-bodied version starts at 47,500 dirhams. So if you want to check out any of these bikes, they come full of different goodies on them. So if you want to check them out, head over to Society Motors, and hopefully next time around we'll be testing something else from Society Motors. Thank you.